Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1781. The topic is nutrition, and the title is Reaching Your Daily Protein Requirement Without Dairy, Protein Drinks, or Red Meat. Woof, good luck. But in reality, I wanted to discuss this. There are often nutritional restrictions and or just preferences that can make it challenging to hit your daily protein requirements, which is an important component in losing body fat. When you're trying to diet, you want to lose quote-unquote weight, but what you're really looking to do is lose body fat. If you maintain a proper amount of protein in your diet, you'll maintain muscle tissue as you lose weight, which means that the weight that's coming off is more likely to be body fat. It's going to be some associated water retention, and it can get a little more complicated. But when we think about losing weight, if we undereat our protein, we will lose both body fat and muscle tissue. That means that your composition of body fat versus muscle tissue won't really change. You'll just have less fat and less muscle, but you'll look kind of the same. So a way of talking about this is if you're shaped like a pear, you're just going to be a smaller pear, but you're still a pear. If you're shaped like an apple, you're going to be a smaller apple, but you're still an apple. You're still going to maintain kind of the shape and the composition of your current self. It's just going to be a little bit smaller, you're going to weigh less. Typically what people actually want is they want a change in composition. They want leaner physique. They want to see more muscle or just have less fat. Kevin James, who is a hilarious comedian, talks about that one of his fat loss goals was that his belly wouldn't jiggle when he brushed his teeth. And that's great. A lot of times people just want to be less fat. They're not overly worried about six-pack abs. But whether your goal is to be less fat or have six-pack abs, it's still going to be important to maintain a specific amount or a certain amount or a minimum of protein. That can be challenging when you have food restrictions and or preferences that make protein-rich foods kind of hard to eat, hard to be consistent with. One of my clients is struggling with that exact issue. She doesn't like, she can't eat dairy. She's lactose intolerant. But she also doesn't want to fill her whole day with protein drinks and protein bars, and she doesn't like red meat. So she's struggling with how to get in enough protein. When we first started, she was undereating overall. Undereating calories, undereating protein, undereating everything. So it's been challenging, and she's worked really hard to get her caloric intake up. She has better daily energy. She has lost some body fat. She has less water retention. She is feeling better. But she's still struggling to get in her protein minimum. Right now, her calorie targets are between 1,200 to 1,500. Now that is low, and I would like to get that higher. But, you got to start with something that pushes the boundaries a little, but is still achievable before you can then take the next step. So we're in the journey of taking steps, and the current step we're in is 1,200 to 1,500. I don't want to go any higher in calories if we're not hitting the right amount of protein within that calorie count. Because then she's just going to be consuming more carbs and fats, which isn't going to help. It's actually going to cause her to gain more body fat and or kind of prevent fat loss. So we need to make sure that the ratio of protein to carbs and fats is correct before we can increase calories and give her more food, which is actually what we need to do in the long run. So our short-term goal is to get her protein up. Right now, she is struggling to consume at least 80 grams of protein a day. Now, for some people, that can be very challenging. Others, that's going to be, 1/3 of their day. I have some clients that eat over 200 grams of protein a day, and they do that pretty easily. I actually have to tell them to eat less sometimes. But for everybody, they have their own challenges. For those people, they might be challenged in other ways if protein content isn't their challenge. Everybody has a challenge. Everybody has a struggle. For some people, the struggle, their challenge is getting in enough protein. So she struggled to hit her calories and protein targets earlier when we first started working together. but she's now hitting her calorie targets. But the protein is still very low, and her calories are mostly in the kind of the daytime, but really heavy into the evening, which we definitely want to change. If the calories are mostly in the evening, you're going to have low daily energy, you're going to have higher cortisol levels, which leads to higher water retention and poorer sleep. And you're going to have poor body composition. You're going to have less muscle maintenance throughout the day because you don't have enough protein coming in to heal and maintain muscle tissue. And you're going to reinforce the reason why your body has body fat. In podcast 1344, it's a nutrition podcast titled Balancing the Books. I go through in that podcast in a much deeper level, so I would definitely suggest you check that out. But the reason why we have body fat is there would be times when we would have a surplus of food, and there would be times when we had a deficit, like an insufficient amount of food. What our body developed the ability to do was to store some of the extra in the surplus to make up for the inefficiency, the deficit. That storage of the excess is body fat. So if you eat the majority of your calories in the evening, your body is going to save some of that to cover the next day's gap. When you wake up, you don't eat anything for the first 6 to 8 hours or so, and you're just kind of running on nothing. You're running on body fat. So then when you eat again in the evening, your body saves whatever it can to replace the body fat, and it tries to actually replace more. If your body feels that body fat is important and is being counted on, it will not only fight to maintain the current amount of body fat, it'll fight to try to put in even more. So it's a losing battle if you don't appropriately consume and appropriately schedule your calories throughout the day. So that's what we're working on. We're trying to get in more calories at the beginning of the day, and we're trying to get in higher protein content. So, recently in her journal, and with all my clients, they have an online journal they can access 24/7, ask any questions they want. I go in there every 5 to 7 days. I try to do it sooner if I can. Answer all their questions, give an update, for the week. Go through their food journals, go through any videos they have for training. That's our document for education and feedback. And then, of course, they need something sooner than 5 to 7 days. All my clients have my phone number. They can text me. They can email me, to get faster communication. But our kind of weekly check-ins are on a roughly 5 to 7 day rotation. So she wrote, because I'd asked her about the morning, I'd asked her about protein limitations, and her response for the morning component was, she said, usually I'm not that hungry in the morning. It is a struggle to want to eat something. There's a couple reasons. I'm going to give you my answer here to her in the document, but I want to tell you some other things that we've talked about. One of the reasons is she eats most of her food at night. So she has this big amount of food, and then she goes to bed 8 hours later. Her body still, hasn't created a deficit where it's hungry because it had a surplus of food. Then it laid down and did nothing, so it digested the food. But there hasn't been this activity or any kind of reason or purpose for the body to be hungry. So she won't feel hungry until she corrects the behavior. The behavior of eating most of her calories at night is causing her not to be hungry in the morning. So we need to address that. We can't just say, well, I'm not hungry in the morning, therefore I won't eat. Nope. We got to eat a little bit of something so that way we can eat a little bit less in the evening. And then the next day we eat a little bit more in the beginning of the day and a little bit less in the evening until we get that balanced out. And then all of a sudden she won't be going to bed with a surplus of food, so she will wake up hungry. So her current behavior is reinforcing why she isn't hungry in the morning. She shouldn't rely on her hunger in the morning to be the reason for her current behavior. If she isn't hungry, and then it's like, well, I just won't eat. No, that's not, we're getting the cart before the horse kind of thing. We want to stop eating so much in the evening so we are hungry in the morning. So that'll help. So in her response, because we had talked about some other things before, I wrote and I said, it will be helpful towards fat loss and body composition, parentheses, fat versus muscle balance, for us to get some calories in earlier in the day, even if it's just 100 to 200 calories, even if it's just a drink or some quick, easy fluids. So to boost hunger, it can be helpful to actually drink something with sugar, such as fruit juice, tea, Gatorade, etc. Something that has roughly about 20 to 30 grams of sugar in it. Your body will respond to the sugars by breaking them down and processing them, which then sparks the body to feel hungrier for more. It's like the body then realizes it needs more than just those 20 to 30 grams of sugar. So I would recommend doing this so you're hungrier earlier in the day, and that'll help you eat less later in the day. This will improve your body composition. It'll give you better energy throughout the day. You'll hold less water weight. You'll feel tighter in your physique, and you'll have better sleep quality. So that's what I would recommend if somebody doesn't feel hungry in the morning, and you're saying, well, that's why I don't eat in the morning, and then that's leading to you eating everything in the evening. Stop eating everything in the evening. Take a little bit away from the evening. Put it into the morning. Then the next day, take a little bit more away from the evening. Put it into the next morning. Start to make that transition, and that will help. Then I asked her about her protein. We've had several weeks and weeks where the protein just hasn't improved. There's been really no change. I've listed several suggestions, several things that she can do, but nothing seems to be changing. Nothing seems to be moving. So I asked her. I said, what's going on? Do you just not like protein foods? What is the struggle you're having? I just wanted to know, because if it was lack of information, which she had referred to in one of the previous conversations, she said, I just don't know what the right protein-rich foods are. Well, so I gave her that. We had it in the original nutrition program. There's a list of protein-rich foods, but I expanded on that and gave her an extra list of meals. Well, then nothing changed. So it's like, okay, the next week we look and see protein's not any different. It's like, it must not have been the information. What do you think it might be? Now, often clients don't even know. They're kind of going through this the first time. They're trying to figure their own selves out. So it's not that they're not telling me something in most cases. In most cases, they just flat out don't really know what the challenges are, what the stresses are, and they're kind of feeling it and finding their way through it, and then they can figure out how to verbalize it. So in the latest journal she wrote, I like protein-based foods, but I'm limited because I can't eat dairy products like cheese sticks. I also try to find foods low in sugar and high in protein that doesn't have a lot of fat and calories. I don't always like to eat protein bars and protein shakes all the time. Being lactose intolerant is challenging, as well as having IBS. I also don't eat red meat, which is high in protein. I don't like the taste of it. I eat fish and chicken. So I'm going to give you a rundown of what I wrote to her, but I want to say that I'm super thankful that she kind of gave me a little more details and a little more information in this answer, because now I can start to help a little bit. These are all very reasonable feelings. They're more common than what people might think, and now that I know, I can help. So this is what I love. This is the part where I get excited, because it's problem solving. If somebody can't have dairy, they don't like red meat, they don't want protein bars and protein drinks, it's like, ooh, okay. So we have some restrictions, we have some challenges. Can we figure this out? It becomes kind of a game. So I actually get really excited by this stuff. It's a little bit different than the normal stuff that I deal with on a regular basis. So it's a fun kind of problem solving. So I wrote back to her. I said, totally understand. Having these types of restrictions and food preferences can definitely make hitting our protein goals challenging. But here are some ideas. Plan to have at least one meal of fish or chicken every day. So since she does like fish and chicken, I don't want her to eat, fish 3 times a day or chicken 3 times a day, then she'll end up hating those things. But we can lean into having one of those two pretty much every day. So I said aim for 4 to 6 ounce portions, which can help to provide roughly 20 to 25, 20 to 30-ish grams of protein. Since her target is 80 grams of protein, that dang near gets us halfway. So that's really helpful. For us to rely on that as an everyday occurrence. I'm going to have fish or I'm going to have chicken every day I know that's one of my meals. There's a million ways to cook fish and chicken, so it doesn't have to feel too burdensome or too boring. But that's something we can rely on to give us a nice, consistent, at least 20 grams of protein. I'd like to see her push up to that 6 ounces. I do realize that can be a little bit more challenging due to the size of the meal, but we know we can count on at least 20 grams of protein out of that. I then listed some other foods that she might want to try. Tofu, for example. It can be chopped, it can be added to a salad, it can be crumbled and put into like a high protein pasta dish. There's chickpea pasta, which is one of the brands is Banza, B-A-N-Z-A. This is what I use from Meredith. It's a chickpea pasta and it has really high protein content. Out of that meal, like a normal portion of chickpea pasta, you're going to get at least another 20 grams of protein. So she's going to get 20 grams of protein out of the pasta. If you add a little bit of crumbled tofu in there, some people like crumbled tofu, crumbled blue cheese, a couple chopped up veggies, and then they eat that with the pasta. That's a good dish. That's going to be at least 30 to 40 grams of protein right there. Plus that fish or chicken meal, we're already at 60. She's struggled some days to even reach 60, so now in 2 meals, we could be at 60. There's also seitan, which is a wheat gluten. It's not actually meat, but it has really high protein content. There are like little treats like beef jerky, like seitan beef jerky. It's not actual beef. But they also sell seitan burgers, seitan sausages. So it's like a plant-based protein that can be used to give us extra protein. We can also do lentils and beans. They do have carbs, so they do contribute extra calories on top of the protein, but it is a good protein source. Like chickpeas, like we said, you can actually have chickpeas added to a salad, or you can have like that chickpea pasta, like I mentioned. There's nuts and seeds. Again, they do have fats, so they do come with some extra calories. But if we have the high protein meal with the fish and the chicken, or a high protein meal with the Banza pasta and the tofu, we're going to have some leeway then for higher calories in other meals in order to get our protein in. So with nuts and seeds, she could make that like her own little trail mix. Just mix together a couple different types of nuts, a couple different types of seeds. That could be a quick, easy snack during the day. She could do nut butters, like almond butter, cashew nut butter, peanut butter, and that could be paired with vegetables, like celery, carrots, things like that. And that's going to, again, it does have some fats, but it's going to give us that protein that we want. Quinoa is actually a good protein content for a vegetable, but it's kind of a rice substitute. And she could have the quinoa with the fish and the chicken if she wanted. Or she could mix quinoa with black beans, and that could be a meal. And then there's also non-dairy yogurts, which can be a nice treat, like a soy yogurt, almond milk yogurt, even coconut yogurts. So those are some foods that she could use to increase her protein intake, but they're not dairy, they're not protein drinks and protein bars, and it's not red meat. So I wrote, focusing on a few items within this list per day can help bring up your protein without the calories getting too high. An example could be a salad mix, like just to get a bag of salad mix in some tofu chunks and chickpeas. You can make that really quick, and that's going to give you a high protein, overall low calorie meal. She could do that nuts and seeds trail mix, like I mentioned. She could do black beans and corn over quinoa. You can actually get microwavable quinoa. So you just microwave it in like 90 seconds, so you don't have to cook this big batch and take all that time if you don't want to. So she could microwave the quinoa, she could heat up the black beans and corn, pour that over the quinoa, and then boom, you get a pretty good protein content meal. She has that chicken fishing meal. Chicken and fish, not chicken fishing. Chicken and fish meal. She could have that every day. And then she could have that non-dairy yogurt as a treat, or the seitan beef jerky as a snack. But these are some ways in which we can hit our daily protein requirement without dairy, without protein drinks and bars, and without red meat. So it is challenging when we have certain restrictions, but it is also possible. So I wanted to share that because I believe that people can feel overwhelmed, they can feel frustrated, and they can feel stuck with trying to hit their ideal protein intake when they have various restrictions. I wanted to share that it is possible, and I want to share some of the ideas so maybe you can give them a try. Okay. If you do want help with nutrition, that is what I do. We have one-on-one nutrition only coaching where I write everything personalized for you. We do these weekly check-ins. I answer all your questions. It's only $100 a month, no contract. And then we also have our one-on-one coaching for nutrition and training, which includes the nutrition component, but also training. Is I'll write your nutrition, your training programs. I'll watch your videos, give you reviews on technique. We personalize everything to your schedule, equipment availability, preferences, and everything. That's $200 a month. You can learn more about those services on our website at www.brutalirongym.com. Awesome. If you have any questions, if you need anything, reach out. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support the podcast. It does have a high hosting cost, so I appreciate any donations which you're able to do on our website. And then if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.